I knew I was the outsider from the very first time I stepped into my husband's home. No one had to say it. The way they looked at me was enough to tighten something in my chest. There was a chill in that house, something invisible and poisonous, like smoke curling through every dinner, every conversation, every hollow smile. For 6 long years, I lived among people who never truly wanted me there. And the worst part? The one man who should have had my back, Nathan. My husband was the coldest of them all. If you think being disliked by your in-laws is hard, wait until I tell you about what happened last Christmas, the one where everything quite literally came crashing down. My name is Sienna, M34, and I live in the quiet suburbs of Willow Creek. I work as an accountant for a mid-sized tech startup. Not rich, but I have a comfortable life. I met Nathan during grad school back in Columbia State, and after 2 years of dating, we tied the knot. Back then, I believed I had found the one, a warm, witty guy who always told me he'd stand by my side no matter what. What I didn't realize was that the what would come from inside his own family. Nathan's family prided themselves on their traditional values, the kind they wrapped in stars and stripes and dinner table prayers. His mother, Margot, a woman in her 60s with flawless hair and calculating eyes, had disliked me from day one. I felt it in the very first handshake. She squeezed just a little too hard and gave me a smile that felt more like a test than a welcome. Nathan's 2 sisters, Brielle and Tessa, weren't much better. Together, the 3 of them were like a frozen fortress, perfectly united in their mission to keep me out. At first, I thought maybe I just needed to earn their trust. I initiated conversations, brought expensive wine to family dinners, even learned to bake Margot's signature spiced pumpkin pie just to impress her. But every attempt was met with blank stares or polite shrugs. It was like throwing kindness into a bottomless pit. Margot knew how to play nice in front of guests, but behind closed doors, she treated me like hired help. While she and her daughters lounged around reminiscing about European cruises and family summers in Aspen Ridge, I was stuck in the kitchen scrubbing dishes, pretending not to hear the laughter echoing from the other room. I used to tell Nathan how I felt. He'd just sigh and say, "You're reading too much into it, Sienna. Give it time." But time only made it worse. They never added me to the family group chat. They organized ski weekends to Aspen Ridge, birthday brunches for Nathan's late father, who I'd never met, and casual shopping trips downtown, all without ever inviting me. I'd find out from photos on social media, tagged with captions like "Family First." Last Christmas, they did a secret gift exchange at Margot's house a day before the official celebration. I wasn't told. I only found out because I came home early from work and saw Brielle's and Tessa's cars parked outside. I walked in to find them huddled around the Christmas tree, wrapping paper everywhere, gift bags from luxury stores in their laps. The room went silent the second they saw me. Brielle gave me a weak smile. "Oh, you're home early." Margot didn't even look at me, just sipped her wine, eyes glued to the TV. Just a few small things, nothing major. I stood there in my wrinkled work clothes, watching them unwrap perfumes, cashmere scarves, and bottles of Italian wine while Nathan scrolled on his phone, not even glancing up. But that wasn't the worst of it. The real breaking point came this Christmas. I had no idea what to expect when I walked into Margot's house that afternoon. But I certainly didn't expect what felt like a public execution wrapped in lights and cinnamon-scented lies. The house smelled like baked butter and warm nostalgia, the kind I was never a part of. The living room sparkled with fairy lights. The Christmas tree towered above everyone, draped in ribbons and gold ornaments, the kind of scene you'd expect from the cover of Modern Living magazine. Brielle was laughing loudly at one of Tessa's not-so-funny stories, while Margot stood in the open-concept kitchen, still wearing her baking gloves, but already reapplying her wine-colored lipstick. Nathan was pouring white wine into his mother's glass, looking annoyingly carefree. He didn't even notice I was standing behind him for nearly a full minute. I stood there invisible. When dinner began, Everyone gathered around a long dining table covered with a delicate lace cloth, polished glassware, scented candles, and a golden brown turkey that Margot placed in the center like a sacred centerpiece. I was seated at the far end, across from Brielle and Tessa, while Margot sat at the head like a queen surveying her Connecticut palace. Dinner unfolded just as I expected all about them. Brielle boasted about her trip to Sonoma Valley with her new boyfriend. Tessa went on about an art exhibit she was invited to, though I knew she'd just tagged along with someone more connected. And Margot? She didn't miss a beat, proudly doting on her daughters while slipping in little jabs. One was aimed directly at me. Some women still can't get a simple pumpkin pie right. I smiled faintly and took small sips of wine, trying to keep my composure. I thought maybe, just maybe, if I stayed quiet tonight, they'd go easier on me. I was wrong. As dessert was being brought out, Margot clapped her hands 3 times like she was about to unveil a royal decree. "Before we cut the pie," she said with a glowing smile, "I have a little surprise." The air tightened. She reached beneath her chair and began pulling out gift bags thick, deep red with each name printed in shiny gold lettering. One by one, she passed them around the table. Brielle unwrapped a sleek designer handbag. I recognized the logo, and I knew it cost at least $500. Tessa received a 2-day all-inclusive spa retreat at a luxury resort. Nathan was handed a bottle of rare whiskey, the same brand he'd mentioned months ago in passing. I sat still, my hand gripped tightly around my wine glass, trying to swallow the cold knot rising in my throat. And then nothing. No more bags, no tag with my name. Margot looked at me with faux innocence, her voice syrupy sweet. "Oh dear, Sienna looks like I forgot you." She let out a light chuckle. Brielle giggled. Tessa covered her mouth to stifle a laugh. And Nathan, my husband. He laughed too, not nervously, not kindly, just laughed. For a moment, I froze. It felt like I was standing naked in the middle of a room filled with people who no longer bothered to hide their cruelty. But I didn't cry. I didn't scream. "It's okay," I said, my voice calm, steady. "Good thing I didn't forget about you." Silence. Heavy. Deadly. Like I had shattered a perfect porcelain moment. Margot raised an eyebrow. "What do you mean by that?" I just smiled. "You'll see." Brielle frowned. Tessa shot a glance at her mother. Nathan stopped laughing. The warmth in the room vanished like a switch had been flipped. But I said nothing more. I calmly picked up my fork and sliced into my pumpkin pie, savoring it slowly, not because it tasted good, but because I could feel their confusion growing. And for the first time in 6 years, I didn't feel small. I saw something new in their eyes. Not mockery. Fear. That's when I reached into my handbag and pulled out a small silver box, elegantly wrapped with a crimson ribbon. It looked like it came straight from an upscale boutique. I stood and walked over to Margot, handing it to her gently with both hands so everyone could see. "For you," I said, never breaking eye contact. Her smile faltered. Her face, once smug, now started to dim. Brielle and Tessa exchanged nervous glances. Nathan blinked, stunned like he didn't recognize me anymore. The quiet, agreeable wife had just broken character. Margot looked at the gift like it was poisoned. Her hand trembled slightly, but she tried to keep her trademark disdain. "Oh, Sienna, you shouldn't have. I hope you know I never expect anything from you." "I know," I said softly, "but this one's special." A hush swept over the room. Curiosity grew, thick and tense. Brielle tilted her head. Tessa leaned forward. Nathan sat completely still. Margot slowly untied the ribbon, peeled away the wrapping paper, and pulled out a thick stack of documents inside. Her hand shook for real now. No more pretending. What is this?" she asked, her voice hoarse, strained. I leaned back in my seat, pouring myself another glass of wine, not fast, not slow. They're financial records from your event planning company, I said calmly, and a few amended tax returns from the past 7 years. The silence in the room dropped like a thunderclap. Gone was the giggling. Gone was the smug superiority. Only the crisp sound of rustling paper remained and the uneven rhythm of Margot's breathing. Tessa was the first to break the silence. Mom, what is this? Is this real? Brielle snatched the top document and flipped through it quickly. Her face went pale. You hid this from us? Margot didn't speak. She just stared at the pages in her hands, as if she could make them disappear by sheer will. Her lips were pressed so tightly together, they lost their color. Her other hand clutched the armrest with a grip that made her knuckles turn bone white. I took another sip of wine. Just thought I'd remind you to file with the IRS, I said quietly, the way you forgot me tonight. Nathan finally spoke. His voice was sharp and low, almost like a warning. Sienna, are you serious? You've been spying on my mother? I turned to him, calm as ever, the corner of my mouth curling slightly. No, Nathan, I investigated. There's a difference. I have eyes. I see things. Things someone as willfully blind as you refuses to. Margot slammed her hand against the table and shot up from her chair. You have no idea what you've just done. Oh, I do, I said, still seated, still composed. You've been evading taxes, hiding assets, falsifying income. But worse than that, Brielle snapped, her voice rising. What could possibly be worse than that? I looked at her dead in the eyes. You lied to your own daughters. You hoarded money while pretending you couldn't help Brielle fix her house, and while Tessa was unemployed and desperate. Tessa turned to her mother, her eyes glossy with tears. You said you didn't have a cent to spare, that you were saving for retirement. Brielle's face flushed with anger. She slapped her palm on the table. Meanwhile, you were booking luxury spa packages, flying first class, and stashing money into secret accounts. Margot glared at me like she wanted to throw the wine glass across the room, but behind the fury I saw it. Real fear. Nathan looked back at his mother, his voice shaking. Mom, is this true? Nathan? Don't listen to her, Margot snapped. She's twisting things, making them up. I pushed a small USB stick across the table toward him. Everything you need is on there. Bank transfers, accountant emails, statements, all of it. Margot lunged forward, trying to snatch the drive, but Tessa held her back firmly. No, I want to see it. We all deserve to see it. She flipped open the files, and both sisters began scanning the pages, their eyes darting over figures and names. It didn't take long. Margot turned to me again, seething. You've destroyed this family? No, I said, my voice like ice. You did that years ago. I just turned the lights on. Nathan was quiet, face drained of color, his eyes bouncing between his mother and me. He looked lost, torn between loyalty and truth. But I wasn't waiting for him anymore. I turned my gaze back to Margot, unwavering. This Christmas dinner came with a very special gift. Brielle let out a small gasp. She flipped to another page in the folder. Wait, what is this? A withdrawal from Dad's retirement account? I tilted my head slightly, still sipping my wine. Margot stood frozen, one hand gripping the back of her chair like it was the only thing keeping her upright. Tessa leaned in, her fingers trembling as she traced the print on one of the bank statements. This is from his 401k. Mom, you took money from Dad's retirement? No way, Brielle said, turning to her mother, her voice a mixture of fury and disbelief. You told us you never touched any of that money. Margot's jaw tightened. She tried to gather herself, but her eyes had already gone hollow, the weight of her lies crashing down around her. The wrinkles around her mouth twitched. You could see the next lie trying to form, but it never came in time. What did you spend it on? Tessa asked, her voice cracking. What did you use Dad's money for? Margot whispered, barely audible. I borrowed it. I was going to put it back. I let out a soft, cold laugh sharp enough to slice through the silence. Sure you were. I was going to put it back, Margot whispered. I let out a sharp, cold laugh, the kind that slices like glass. How? I asked, tilting my head. With the way you've manipulated the books, hidden income, rerouted funds. Let's be honest, you never planned to return a cent. Brielle slammed the papers onto the table, her voice breaking. You told me you had nothing. When I was trying to mortgage the house for the kids, I was looking at second jobs while you were out booking 5-star hotels. Tessa's voice was tight, her fists clenched at her sides. I had to borrow from my ex to cover my baby's hospital bills. And you sat there pretending you couldn't help while secretly bleeding money out of Dad's retirement? Margot turned away, like she could escape the fury and disbelief around her. But there was nowhere to run. Her eyes met mine, and I didn't say a word. I didn't need to. I just sat there, quiet, still like a mirror reflecting the wreckage. That's when the dining room door opened. Richard, Margot's husband, walked in wearing a gray sweater, a half-finished cup of tea still in his hand. He stopped in his tracks, his face shifting the second he felt the air in the room tense and brittle, like a thread about to snap. What's going on? He asked, eyes scanning each of us. Brielle turned to him sharply. Dad, you need to see this. She picked up the documents with trembling hands and passed them to him. Richard took them slowly, his brow creasing deeper with each page he read. His face turned red. Margot, his voice cracked. Is this real? Margot rushed toward him, grabbing his hand. I did it for the family. I was just trying to keep the company afloat to maintain appearances. I was going to tell you once things settled down. Richard stepped back, as if her touch had scalded him. You took money from my retirement account, he whispered, without even asking me. I had never seen Richard like this before, eyes bloodshot, voice trembling, rage boiling just beneath the surface. I worked for 40 years. I trusted you. I never imagined you'd do this. Margot tried again, her voice faltering. It was just a small amount to reinvest. You know the business has been struggling. It's not about the business, Mom, Brielle suddenly screamed. You used that money for shopping, resorts, hidden accounts. You lied to all of us. Richard's hands began to shake. He let the pages fall to the floor, then staggered back until he hit the table behind him, using it for support. I feel his voice drop to a whisper. Betrayed. I can't believe this. Richard, please, Margot begged, her voice barely holding together. I had my reasons. There's no reason, he snapped. None. Not for deceiving your partner. I trusted you. I trusted you completely. Tessa bowed her head, tears falling freely now. Mom, how could you? And then Margot turned to me, fury returning to her face. This is your fault. You planned this. You set me up. I didn't even flinch. No, I said coolly. You set yourself up. I just turned the light on. She lunged toward me, but Richard raised his hand, stopping her mid-motion. Enough, Margot. His voice was low, steady. If what I just read is even half true, I'm calling a lawyer. I can't live with someone who would take everything without a second thought. And for the first time that night, Margot didn't argue. She didn't speak. She just stood there, lips pressed tight, her face ashen, like all the life had been drained out of her. And in that room, still twinkling with fairy lights and fake warmth, a family quietly shattered. But deep down, I knew this wasn't the end. It was only the beginning. Richard didn't move. He stood frozen beside the table, his eyes locked on the scattered pages across the hardwood floor. I watched his knuckles turn white as he gripped the table's edge, his chest heaving up and down as if trying to swallow a storm too large to contain. I can't believe this, he murmured, but the words echoed like a gunshot in the silence. Brielle and Tessa stood still. Nathan looked lost, his eyes jumping from me to his mother, to his father. Then Richard took one small step forward and stopped. Sarku, can't breathe. His hand went to his chest. His face turned pale like the blood had drained from him completely. "Dad!" Tessa screamed, lunging toward him. I rushed to his side at the same moment as Brielle. Nathan's glass hit the floor and shattered, but no one turned. All eyes were on Richard, who was bending forward, his entire body collapsing like a felled tree. We caught him barely, but he was heavy. His limbs convulsed slightly, then went limp. I waited, I whispered, stepping forward, my voice low but steady. I swallowed my pride. I gave your mother chance after chance to act like a decent human being, and every single time she crushed my dignity like it meant nothing. Nathan turned his face away, shame flickering in his expression. But I didn't stop. Not this time. I used to think you were just caught in the middle. I told myself you were trying to keep the peace, that maybe just maybe you didn't know how to choose. But tonight I shook my head. Tonight, when you saw the truth right in front of you, when you watched your mother lie, steal, hide money from your sisters, rob your father's retirement account, and you're still here blaming me? I looked him in the eyes. Tell me, Nathan, whose side are you really on? His lips parted, but for a second, nothing came out. Then, finally, he said, quietly, I just wanted to keep this family together. I stepped back. That line hit me harder than any insult ever could. This family was never together, Nathan, I said. Your mother manipulated everything and everyone. She never wanted me here. And you chose her. Over and over again. You chose her silence instead of my pain. Behind us, Brielle stood slowly. Her voice was calm, cold. Don't, Nathan. Don't twist this, Tessa added. Mom was wrong. We all saw it. Sienna didn't break anything. He just showed us what was already shattered. Nathan's mouth opened, then closed again. He looked down at the floor as if trying to find the version of this story where he wasn't the coward. I felt no more anger, just a strange emptiness, like something heavy had finally been set down after years of carrying it. You just lost your last chance to do the right thing, I said softly. I never needed you to protect me, Nathan. I only needed you to see me. I slipped my wedding ring from my finger, slowly, deliberately. The metal felt cold in my palm, like a relic from a museum display, something that once had meaning, now only holding weight. I placed it gently in his hand. This is the last time I wait for you to choose me. He didn't say a word. His hand clenched around the ring, trembling slightly, as though letting go of it might break everything for good. But it was already broken. I turned away. I didn't care what he would say next. For the first time in 6 years, I felt something strange. Relief. Because the truth is, a man can wear a wedding ring, sleep beside you every night, call you his wife. But if he doesn't stand by you when you need him the most, he's just a stranger carrying his mother's last name. I left the hospital shortly after the doctor came out and announced that Richard had stabilized, though his heart had sustained serious damage and he'd need close monitoring. Brielle and Tessa stayed with him overnight. Margot had vanished the moment a nurse gently asked her to stop interrupting the medical staff. Nathan remained in the waiting room, hunched over, looking like someone who'd aged a decade in a single night. But I didn't look back. There was no need. The cold wind slapped across my face as I stepped into the parking lot, but I didn't shiver. Instead of feeling frozen, I felt light, untethered. The ring in my pocket felt strange now, just a piece of metal, nothing more. It didn't belong to me anymore. When I arrived home, I didn't turn on the lights. I stood in the middle of the living room, staring at the wall of photos our wedding, a laughing honeymoon shot from Cannon Bay, snapshots from birthdays and weekends that felt a lifetime away. The leather chair where Nathan used to read every morning still sat in its usual spot. His jacket still hung over the corner of the couch. Everything looked the same, and yet none of it belonged to me anymore. I opened the drawer, placed the ring in my old jewelry box, and quietly took out a small suitcase. A few clothes, my laptop, passport, wallet. I didn't need much. I just needed to leave before I talked myself into staying. The next morning, I sat at the kitchen table and opened my laptop. I typed a short email to the lawyer I had quietly contacted a month earlier, back when I first started investigating Margot. Subject line: Begin divorce proceedings. That afternoon, I received the first message from Nathan since the hospital. Sienna, please. I need to talk. Just once. I didn't respond. 2 weeks later, Margot was summoned by federal investigators. Charges of tax evasion, corporate fraud, embezzlement. Everything I had documented and passed to my lawyer had been forwarded to the IRS and FBI. And it wasn't just shady books. There was proof she had used fake employee names to drain pandemic relief funds from the Small Business Assistance Program during COVID. The local media picked it up. Her name, her company, Margot Blake Eventsol splashed across headlines. Photos showed her leaving court in a wrinkled gray suit, no makeup, her carefully coiffed hair undone. There was no trace left of the woman who once presided over Christmas dinner, like royalty. And strangely, I didn't feel satisfied, just right. After being released from the hospital, Richard filed for divorce. Brielle sent me a short text. Dad went straight to a lawyer. He's not looking back. Tessa cut off contact with their mother entirely. No calls, no messages, not even a glance at her name. Margot, desperate, began calling, emailing. She even sent handwritten letters to her daughters. No one answered. She lost everything. Her family, her name, her business, her image, and Nathan. He sent a flood of emails ranging from angry to apologetic, some begging, some bitter. One subject line simply read, "You planned to leave me from the start, didn't you?" I read it once, then deleted it. Because if after all this, he still thought I was the problem, there was nothing left to say. The emails kept coming, some filled with anger, others with desperate apologies. One of them read, "I didn't know it would go this far. You planned to leave me from the start, didn't you?" I sat staring at the screen, unmoved. I didn't reply. There was nothing left to say. If after everything he still believed I was the problem, then there truly was nothing left to save. Late one afternoon, near the end of the month, Nathan appeared outside my new apartment. I saw him through the security camera standing there, in a coat that looked too big for his suddenly smaller frame. His eyes were sunken. His voice when he spoke was hoarse. "Sienna, please. Just 5 minutes." I opened the door but didn't invite him in. "What do you want?" "I've been thinking about everything," he said. "I was wrong. I should have stood by you." I crossed my arms, leaning against the doorframe. "You weren't just wrong, Nathan. You chose her. You watched me be humiliated, excluded, turned into a joke, and when I finally stood up for myself, you told me I was destroying the family." He looked at me, silent. "I know," he said finally. "You don't trust me anymore. I wouldn't either. But I'll do anything to make it right." I shook my head. "You don't need to. I'm done waiting for anyone to make it right. I already made my choice." And with that, I gently, firmly closed the door. No yelling, no crying, just silence. Inside, I sat on my sofa and watched the golden afternoon sunlight stretch across the wooden floor. For the first time in 6 years, I felt peace. Not because Margot had fallen, not because Nathan finally admitted the truth, but because I had finally freed myself. After that day, he didn't come again, not right away, and I didn't expect him to. I figured it would take time for him to realize I wasn't going back, that the woman he thought would always wait had walked away, not with rage, not with revenge, but with a quiet door that shut and didn't open again. 3 weeks later, the first call came. I didn't answer. 4 more followed. Then a long voicemail. Then an email. Subject line, "I'm sorry." I sat at a cafe a few blocks from my apartment, watching his name light up my screen. I felt nothing. No hurt, no heat, just stillness, like the calm surface of a lake after a storm. I reached out, tapped block number. That was it. No hesitation, no regret. And that was the moment I knew I had truly let go. These days, I wake up every morning at 6 a.m. I brew my coffee and open the window to let the sunrise in. My apartment is small, a studio in the North End, not far from downtown Willow Creek, tucked above a quiet bookstore and a flower shop. I live simply. No screaming across dinner, no cold silences, no invisible walls in a house full of people pretending to love me. I grocery shop alone and don't feel embarrassed. I eat dinner in silence and don't feel lonely. On Fridays, I buy myself fresh flowers. On Sundays, I read novels I never had time for when I was Nathan's wife. Every month, I revise my personal financial plan and track my growth. Not just in numbers, in peace, in clarity, in power. When Margot was officially charged with financial fraud when the news broke and her name hit the headlines, I didn't celebrate. I just folded the newspaper and threw it in the trash, because I had already learned real victory isn't when someone else falls. It's when they no longer have power over you. Brielle and Tessa still check in from time to time. They send short messages, little thank you notes. They know I don't need them, but they send them anyway. One day, Tessa wrote, "If it weren't for you, our whole family would still be living in denial. I'm sorry. Sorry we let you suffer for so long." I didn't reply, but I smiled. That was enough. About a month after Margot's court appearance made it into the major newspapers, Nathan tried again. Another call from a number I didn't recognize. I knew it was him. I didn't even wait for the third ring. Decline. 3 days later, an email arrived. I have no excuses left. I've started therapy. I need to fix everything, including myself. Not to get you back, just so I can look in the mirror without shame. I read it, then clicked archive. I no longer needed his apology. I didn't need his redemption. What I needed was freedom, and I had already found it. One quiet Saturday afternoon, as early winter rain began to fall over Willow Creek, I wandered into the little bookstore on Rose Hill Street, the one with creaky floors and a tiny cafe in the back. I sipped coffee and flipped through a novel I had bought weeks ago but never touched. A middle-aged woman sat beside me, glancing over. "That's a good one," she said with a kind smile. "You'll like the ending." I returned the smile, small but genuine. I just had an ending of my own. She didn't ask. I didn't explain. When I stepped outside, the drizzle continued, soft and silver, blanketing the quiet street. The wind was cold, the sky gray, the pavement slick with rain. But inside, I felt warm. Freedom, I realized, isn't a place you run to. It's a moment when you finally choose yourself and don't look back. An afternoon without shouting, a quiet room, a hot cup of coffee in my hands, no one rushing me, no one criticizing, no one making me feel like being alone meant I was missing something. For the first time in my adult life, I felt full, not from food or love or validation, just full, with peace. I used to believe happiness was being loved by someone else, but now I understand true happiness is learning how to love yourself. I don't know what lies ahead. Life is unpredictable. Healing isn't linear. And some days, I still catch myself looking at the past like it might still matter. But one thing I do know without a single doubt in my heart, I will never go back to being the woman I was in that house, the woman who sat quietly at the end of a table full of laughter that never included her, the woman who baked pies just to feel worthy, the woman who begged for a seat at a table that was never meant for her. I've made my choice. I choose me. Sienna's story is more than just a tale of betrayal or heartbreak. It's a powerful reminder of what it means to finally wake up after years of being dismissed by the people closest to you. She didn't seek revenge. She didn't burn bridges out of spite. She told the truth. And when the truth wasn't enough, She walked away with her head held high, because sometimes the strongest thing you can do is not fight harder for a place you were never meant to belong to. It's walking away, even if it means walking alone for a while. In real life, not every story ends in dramatic courtroom battles or public downfalls, but many of us know the quieter, heavier kind of heartbreak. Being the outsider in a family you married into. Swallowing your voice to keep the peace. Hoping one day someone will choose you and realizing they never will. And when that moment comes, the one where you finally say, enough, that's not weakness, that's the beginning of freedom. So what do you think? Would you have made the same decision Sienna did? Have you ever walked away from a toxic relationship not out of anger, but out of love for yourself? Share your thoughts in the comments below. And if this story moved you, don't forget to like, subscribe, and follow the channel for more emotional, real-life inspired family stories. We'll see you next time. Until then, choose peace, choose truth, choose you.